Welcome to episode 4 of the Sacred Gut Punch podcast. I'm Dr. Tomi White-Bryan. I'm a coach and consultant in human and organizational performance and the creator of Emotional Intelligence 3.0, a system for achieving extraordinary performance. I'm with a dear friend of mine, Cassie Coon, who I met her in the swimming pool at the local YMCA. She was a swim instructor there, and from the first class I attended of hers, we've been great friends. I love her dearly. So grateful she's agreed to be on the podcast today. Hello and welcome, Cassie.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is quite an honor on my side.
Well, one of my greatest heartbreaks of the last, decade was you moving away from Greensboro, North Carolina to Denver to teach swimming at the Y out there instead of here. So glad you're here. And let's talk about what is your sacred gut punch, Cassie?
Wow. I've had some time to reflect on this after you first invited me. And life is, I think, one gut punch after another sometimes. Never a dull moment. So, I had back surgery at 40. And I think that's kind of the first time that I realized I wasn't invincible and that the world wasn't my oyster. I think that's kind of where it started for me. I went through some really agonizing times there and had some surgery that was not really on my agenda for the year or my bingo card. And I felt really good after that. And I thought, okay, I've come across this. I've conquered it. It's time to move on. And I resumed activities. I got my life back on track. And 3 years later, short 3 years, I was back on the surgeon's table for another back surgery.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And it wasn't anything that you ever, envisioned yourself going through twice. And so I think that kind of gave me pause and said, what did I do wrong? It was like, even with the surgeon, like, what am I going to do now? The chances of this happening were like less than 5% that you would have a failure rate in this surgery. And he's like, you could have done it laying on your couch. And I was like, okay, like, I like this guy. He's not told me I can't go do the things I love to do. He goes, do I want you to run a marathon? Probably not. But I also don't want you to stop living just because this has happened to you. And I think that probably resonated more with me, more than anything that had happened thus far, more than any kind of advice anybody else had given me, my mom, previous bosses, other mentors. And so I think that that's kind of where it all started.
Sounds like he sort of set some parameters. Listen, don't go home and be a bump on the log, but don't go run a marathon. But there's a lot of space in between, Cassie, where you can live your life.
Yes.
And the second surgery, was it a repeat of the first back surgery?
It was, but it was very different circumstances. Ironically, I will never forget this day. It is like etched in my mind. I was at work and we were having a taco day, of all things.
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. And somebody, some lettuce had dropped on the floor and we were cleaning up. And I bent over to pick up the lettuce and I just felt this pop. And one of the women that worked for me, she said, I will never forget the look on your face. She said it was like a cloud came over and the pain was like so great, so instantly. And I didn't even know how I was going to stand back up. And I begged her to take me to my physical therapist because I had found this fantastical physical therapist, Paul. I don't remember his last name, but he was fantastic. And I went in and, we worked together for probably a week and a half and everything was good. I was improving. I'm not going to say everything was good. I was in really a lot of pain. And Matt and I had started going to Utah annually to ski. At that kind of time period of the year. It was when we got married. It was our anniversary time. And I said, Matt, I can't imagine getting on an airplane right now, let alone skiing. And he's like, I get it. It's ironic. We invited his sister and brother-in-law to join us that year. And I just said, I can't do it. And he said, okay. He goes, why don't you have your mom come up and stay with you, for the week just to help you out. I'll go skiing and then, we'll evaluate where we are when you get back. And I flew my mom home on a Thursday, and Matt was supposed to come home on Friday. And Friday, I would say it was evening, maybe not even evening. Anyway, I was putting the rugs back on the bathroom floor, and I was doing it the right way. I was actually down on my hands and knees, not bending over. And it just hit me again, like that same stabbing pain. And I was laying on the floor going, I don't know how I could get to my nightstand, which is maybe 20 feet away, to get the pain medication. And I was thankful I had my cell phone in my pocket, because at this time we weren't as attached to our phones as we are today. I mean, we don't go anywhere without them anymore. But back then it was kind of like, I don't even know why I had it in the sweatshirt pocket. But I called my girlfriend up the street, my running buddy, Carmen. And I said, Carmen, I was like, are you home? Can you come help me out? I'm on the floor of the bathroom and I can't get up. She's like, I can't, but Mike's home. He'll come down there. And her husband is a pharmacist. So I said, okay. He let himself in, came upstairs, and him and my brother-in-law, who's an emergency room physician, worked through some pain meds that could get me through the weekend, because my brother-in-law said, if you go to the emergency room, they're going to drug you up and they're going to tell you to check in with your doctor on Monday. Why bother going? We'll get you through the weekend. And it was probably the longest weekend of my life. Oh, Matt would tell you the same thing, my husband. And I wasn't quite making it through the pain cycle with the drugs they were giving me. And I was like, at some point on Sunday, I said, Matt, I said, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but if they have to take my leg off, I'm
Oh my
ready for that,
gosh. Oh,
because the pain was so severe and radiated down my leg. It was just probably one of the most horrible things. I'd never wish anybody to go through it. And so Matt is not a very forward person. He's non-confrontational. And he got on the phone on Monday morning and called my neurosurgeon's office, and said, where's Dr. Maurer at? And they said, well, he's over at such and such a hospital. And Matt's like, Cass needs to see him. We're going to go. Can you make sure he knows she's coming? And they're kind of like, oh, wait a minute. This is like out of the order. He's like, I don't care. We're going. And, this is really severe. She's like in a lot of pain. And, we're not just going to go to the emergency room. We're going to go to the emergency room where he's at. So we go there, quite a production, because I can't even get myself down the stairs. And I'm not exactly a skinny person. And we don't have, a ranch house at the time. So there's really not a way for Matt to help me down the stairs either without, putting himself in jeopardy. So we limp ourselves out to the car. I lay across the back seat. We drive to the other side of town, get to the emergency room. He drops me off at the front door to go in, and he's going to go park the car. And I walk in and I can hardly stand. And I'm like, and they're like, let me get you a wheelchair. I was like, I can't, no, a wheelchair is not going to work for me. I'm either on the floor or you're going to find a gurney for me. I can't stand. I can't walk. I can't sit in a chair. And they thought I was kidding till I laid down on the floor. And then they thought that was quite a spectacle and went and found a gurney for me and wheeled me right. That got somebody's attention, wheeled me right back, shot me up with something, right? I got the good stuff, like the juice that goes in, like you can feel it going down your arm. And I was in la la land. I'm happy as a clam now. And Matt finally gets in and they take him to me, and they're like basically gonna like, okay, she's pain free now. Go ahead and go home and check in with your doctor. And he's like, oh no, hold the pump the brakes. Her doctor, Dr. Maurer, is in this hospital somewhere. He knows she's coming. You need to find him. And he's going to come down and see her and evaluate her. Again, one of the things you won't forget, the PA says to me, it's not like they're going to do surgery. Exact words from her mouth. So at some point, a little bit later, Dr. Maurer doesn't come down, but his protege does. And he goes, oh, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I can't remember him, but he was cute. And he said, do you remember me from your last surgery? I was, with Dr. Maurer in your last surgery. Yeah, I remember you. And he goes, well, I'm looking at your MRI and how you're presented today. And we're going to hold you overnight and do surgery tomorrow.
wow.
And yeah. And so it was just like, okay. And, and then it's just trying to get through the night, because when you're going into surgery, they can't give you some of the meds that they normally would. So I think I was on a morphine medication to get me through the night to the surgery the next day. And it was like the longest 24 hours, let alone 72, that had gotten me to that point. And again, you wake up from both surgeries. I woke up and I was pain-free. It's like you've gone to sleep and somebody, waves their magic wand on you and you're like, what's going on? Like, I'm afraid to get up from the bed because I'm afraid, okay, if I get up, that's when I'm going to feel the pain. When I get up from the bed, I'm afraid to walk because that's when I'm going to feel the pain. Eventually you get past it. And I approached that recovery different because I was afraid then, right? You're like, okay, if this has happened twice in 3 years, who's to say it's not going to happen again?
Right.
So I took a different approach. I found a physical therapist in sports medicine, and we worked on, strengthening my core and doing some different things to kind of bring me back. That wasn't how I went through the first time. Dr. Maurer, the first time's like, oh, wait 6 months before you do this. Otherwise, you're good after that. And that's how I went about it. And obviously. Thought, well, let's try something a little different that second time. So, but yeah, very, very different journeys from the first time to the second time on surgery.
I love though that you had the wherewithal to say something needs to be different this time because I don't want to do that again.
Absolutely.
So you had to change your lifestyle, I'm assuming.
Well, I haven't run a marathon since then.
Well,
I have found safer activities, right? I've been teaching water fitness for 20 plus years now, how we met. And ironically, I ended up in a water fitness class when I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because I'd finally gotten active in my life again. I've never been a super active person. Like if you had told me when I was 18, Cash, you're going to be teaching aqua fitness and be a spin instructor when you're in your 30s, I would have laughed out loud. Like that just wasn't who I was. And so I'd gotten myself active living in Milwaukee, and I hurt myself, my back. That was my first back injury. And they said it was a spasm or something to that sort. I was like 23 years old. I don't even remember that far back. But anyway, I went to a water fitness class because I wanted to keep active, but be in a safe environment. And that's kind of what started me on that path. So I've always embraced the water activity. I've been lucky to have some great participants, and I resonate with them, the ones that come in with injuries, right? I've had knee replacements, hip replacements, my back hurts, I'm pregnant, my shoulder hurts, whatever it might be. So having found myself in some of those positions, it's a little easier to work with them and understand what they could do differently to be comfortable in the water and to continue their fitness journey. I got back into biking. That's something that I had done earlier in my 30s before my back surgeries. And I got that running bug and I just stuck with it. I did a couple marathons, and one of them was in between. I'm not going to lie, one was in between the surgeries. But biking and water fitness became more important to me. Was able to resume my golfing. And now my latest fetish, I'm not gonna lie, is pickleball. Like I am all in on
you and all
pickleball.
of the whole world, right? As I'm listening to you talk about this, I keep thinking about you've reached this new normal after the second surgery. You've adjusted your life. Then comes the next thing.
Yeah, my mom tells me she's been diagnosed with, I don't even remember the stage, lung cancer.
Mm,
Ironically, we had moved to Colorado, but I was back in Greensboro visiting some friends, and I was upstairs at our friend's house, and my mom had sent me a text, "You need to call me." And that was very uncharacteristic of my mom. I mean, she was always doing something, I was always doing something. We'd always catch up. And it was Easter weekend, which isn't a particularly important holiday to my family. So I called her, and she starts crying almost immediately, which is
mm.
also not the personality of my mom. And she hands the phone to my dad. I can't tell her, she says, and hands the phone to him. And he's kind of crying. I've never seen my dad cry in my life.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, what is this? And she tells me that she's, gotten a phone call from her doctor. She had thought she had pneumonia and had ironically gone to Alaska during the pandemic, the very beginnings of the pandemic. And I questioned her thought process at that point, but okay, the doctor said she's okay. That was my next gut punch because my mom has been my rock. My whole life. My father is not my natural father. He is my adopted father, and he came into my life at 13. And he's a very important individual to me. But my mom she's been my mom since day one, right? And
Right.
she was my guiding light, my principal. She's who I learned my work ethic from. And I feel blessed in that point in my life. I had never really had sickness in my life. So I didn't even know how to act because I'd never seen it. I'd never experienced it. I didn't know what to do. And I will tell you, and I'm not afraid to admit this, I am not a born caregiver. I do not have children. I have my dogs and I love them to death, but there's a certain independence with dogs that you don't have with children. And so I I was flabbergasted. I didn't even know what to do. And my mom is a very take charge kind of woman. So her doctor gave her some feedback that she really didn't care for. It wasn't on her time frame that she felt was important to her given the circumstances, right? So she got on the phone and dialed up the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, New York, and dialed who knows how many times till she got somebody to answer the phone, literally.
Wow.
And somebody who was finally willing to talk to her, he wasn't an oncologist. He was maybe a lung doctor. I don't know what their technical term is, but he said, if you can get me your scans, I'll take a look at them and we'll figure out what we need to do. And he takes a look at her scans and gets her back on the phone and says, if you can be up here next week, we will run you through all the tests that we need to do to confirm what's really going on. And so I made plans to join her on that trip. And my dad was going to stay home with their dogs, given the short nature of the timing, that he was just going to stay there. And I'd meet her at the airport in Minneapolis and would take her down to Rochester and we'd go through the testing. And, she was already like, I could just tell, like even picking her up at the airport, like this isn't the normal strong woman that I'm used to seeing and being with.
Yeah. And Cassie, a lot of times we will default to the healthcare system, and whatever they tell us is what we accept. And your mother took charge. She said, I'm going to do something else. And a lot of times that alone, just having the courage to take charge of our own care makes a huge difference in how we approach it. I don't know if you saw that with your mom or not.
I did, but I was sad that it took to that point for her to take charge, right? Like I questioned her when she went to Alaska with pneumonia.
Right.
Like why was that okay? Like what sane adult goes with pneumonia to Alaska during a pandemic, a respiratory pandemic, no less. So I was really frustrated with her at that point. I mean, I'm going to tell you some things that even frustrated me more about the medical side of the issue. But she did some testing the first day. I don't even remember what they were. And we got a call from the doctor that afternoon. I mean, mind you, this was supposed to take like 4 days of testing. And then on Friday, we were going to meet with the doctor and they were going to come up with a plan. Day one, he calls us and says, you need to come in tomorrow. And I mean, he didn't say it, but you just knew, like, okay, this is more serious than even we thought. And basically told her on day two that she had lung cancer, that it was non-small cell lung cancer, and that it was very serious. She already had mets all over her body.
Mm.
And that his suggestion was that they check her in immediately and start chemo.
Wow.
He's like, you can take this information with you back to Florida if that makes you more comfortable, but you're then going to have to find an oncologist. And, he walked us through some of the challenges we were going to have going back to Florida and why he thought it was most important to start it here now. And so, she, without hesitation, said, yes, let's do that. And she checked into the hospital that day and started treatment. And she was there. It was 3 days of treatment. And here I am scrambling around town trying to change Airbnbs and hotels, trying to find a place to stay and kind of keep myself distracted, honestly, for lack of a better term, because I still didn't know how to process what was happening.
So let me stop you right there, because I think that's so important that I joke, could you give me the instruction manual for being human? Because I've really stunk at it a lot. And I say that because I'll never forget, my father was just going in for some exploratory colon surgery. And I discovered post-surgery that if they come into the waiting room and just shout your name and talk to you, everything's good. But if they tell you to meet in the conference room, they're about to drop the hammer on you. And I had no idea that distinction mattered. And so we go into this room and they go, yeah, we've done all we can for your father. And they dropped the bomb and then they walked away. I like you, I'm a problem solver. I'm sorry, what, you dropped a bomb in my lap. What do I do now? So I understand what you're talking about. You start scrambling because you're really not sure what you're supposed to do. I wasn't prepared for this. Where are we going? What's happening?
Yeah, it's like, and it was kind of one bomb after another through the whole thing. I mean, from beginning to the day my mom passed, it was 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Which I don't think none of us foresaw that, right? I mean, so it makes that part of the conversation even more difficult. So we get her through her 3 days of treatment. And then we are staying, I find us some kind of Marriott downtown Rochester. We have separate rooms because she's on oxygen at that point. And they don't want her to travel without oxygen, which becomes a whole nother puzzle to solve, right? Because it's now Friday, the oxygen place that can rent you an oxygen machine to go on the plane doesn't open till Monday, which means we can't get it till Tuesday. And I'm like flabbergasted that there isn't some other option, right? Because my mom is now, we're in this hotel room. She's extremely uncomfortable, right? She's just been through 3 days of chemo and let alone the news and what her body's going through. And so, we're at that hotel because they have a recliner in the room. Do you know how hard it is to find a hotel with a recliner? It's impossible. And I was literally on the phone to every hotel in Rochester, New York, trying to find a recliner. I was on Airbnb and VRBO looking at the pictures of the hotels and the rooms, and is there a recliner? Because that's the only place she's comfortable right
Yeah,
now.
I don't mean to laugh. You're bringing up, say, my husband's really tall and he doesn't like his feet to hang over the bed. So when you were talking about that, I always have to call. You have king size bed because so I know what you're talking about. It's not simple to discover that stuff.
No. So we somehow make it through that weekend. I drive us back to Minneapolis. I get us on a plane. And at this point, I've told Matt I'm flying home with her, right? At the beginning of this, I was just going to fly there, meet her. She's going to get her test done, and then she's going to fly home. I'm going to fly home, and we'll figure out the rest after that. Well, obviously, I had to pivot on that. So flew home. And at this point, it's Mother's Day weekend, which is hard. My mom lost her mom when my mom would have been in her 30s. My grandmother was only 57. And
Wow.
that's always kind of hung over my head, right? It was kind of odd circumstances. It wasn't, something that, you're just waiting, but you can't not recognize that happened.
Right.
And here we are. My mom is, knocking on 75 and, well past the 57, but still, this woman is in the prime of her life. Like her and my dad travel all over the world. They go a couple times a year on these big trips. Trying to figure out where they haven't been is harder than figuring out where they have been. So, we get her home and kind of resituated, and she's still really mobile at that point. And she's going to do her additional treatments at the Mayo Clinic that's in Jacksonville. Like her and my dad have it all figured out. It's a 3-hour drive up there. They'll just stay someplace. And so we kind of start to get through the summer, and we had a family trip that we were going to do. We wanted to do to the British Virgin Islands. We were going to rent a sailboat as a family. My aunt, uncle, my cousin, her husband, and their 2 boys, my mom and dad, we were all going to be on this boat. So my mom's goal was to be able to go on that trip. And, we all wanted that to be our goal. And mind you, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, right? This is 2021, right? Things haven't been fully, maybe it was 20. Gosh, I can't even remember now. Anyway, and so she goes through some of her cycles, and I go down with her to meet with the doctor about the time period that we have to make the decision of whether or not she's going to be able to go on this trip. And he's like, given that it's just you guys on the boat, right? You're not going to go get on mega cruise ship with 5,000 other people. I'm comfortable, take your precautions going down there on the plane. But, if you feel comfortable and you feel good about going on this trip, I want you to go on this trip. And that was like a win for us, right? Because she was really looking forward to it. She's like, you guys are going anyway, even your dad, even if I can't go, because I want you guys to have this. But it was a win for all of us that she was able to go. Half the group got COVID
Oh my gosh.
on the trip. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? And so that, presented its challenge. Ironically, my dad had COVID. She did not. She did not test positive. And so it's hard because we were on this boat. It's not like she's got another room she can go stay in. Matt's got COVID. I don't. So, I mean, it's just like, so we just kind of tried to gut it out. And she just started wearing her mask 100% of the time. And we had a good trip. We did some family photos while we were down there. She was able to get in the water one time when we were in an area where the current wasn't too strong. So, she could get in and out comfortably. And, she read her book and she enjoyed the time. I look back on it and think, why didn't I do things differently? Because to me at that point, it still wasn't real. Like, I didn't know that I only had a couple months left.
But you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. And I think that's the hardest part of this whole, when you talk about gut punches, even today, I have second thoughts about what I could have done differently with our relationship. I mean, we were a lot closer earlier in my life. I mean, we had the love-hate relationship through my teenage years and then in college, I would say. And then once I became an adult, I I really leaned on her for guidance in the professional world. And then I met Matt, and then she kind of took a little bit of a back seat in my life. And as she started to age, our relationship changed a little bit, and I'd get frustrated with her on things like, I found out through this whole thing, my mom had a tummy tuck that I didn't know anything about.
Oh gosh.
And so I was frustrated by that because I'm like, that's a serious surgery, right? To your point, like you go in for something like random and that can turn into something significant. So I was sad and disappointed that she had that. And why she didn't feel like she could share that with me was frustrating. But even that trip, I was just like, kind of like, what could I have done differently? Did I really spend the quality time with her? Because I was like, I need a vacation too. And so I was selfish.
I want to call you on the carpet about calling yourself selfish with great love, right? Because one of the most important things I learned about being a caregiver, right? I took care of my mother for over 2 decades and my brother for, I don't know, 16 years now. And the most important thing is I have to take care of myself. If I don't, I can't give to them what I don't have. And so I think this notion of we're being selfish is unfair to those of us who have to be the caregiver because you have to take care of yourself.
I think you understand that fundamentally, but I think like being able to process it again, this is all hindsight to me, right? I didn't see it in the moment. Like for me at that point, I need my vacation too. And again, kind of trying to ignore what's really going on with my mom, right? I mean, again, you can see she's lost weight, her color, she's wearing a turban at that point because she's lost her hair. And, kind of just trying to push that off to the side that this is just a temporary, stop on the long line of life. And so I was a little frustrated with my aunt and uncle and because the whole mask situation came up and, there's a certain politicalness to that. And it became a little divisive. And so, you can't do anything about it looking back, but, it was just some certain things there. I enjoyed the trip, but there's a lot of what ifs, right? That you look at it going after that. So,
In the wake of your mother's passing, was there like I mean, for me when my father died, that was a identity shattering moment. He was my best friend. How was I going to live life without him? Curious if you had something similar to that with the passing of your mom.
yeah, I think it hits me at different times. Like, I don't know when it's going to roll up. I think one of the probably the most memorable times for me that it hit me was my birthday after she passed. And Matt and I had gone up to the mountains, and she was a birthday person, right? She always made you feel special on your birthday. You always, got a card or, if it was a significant birthday, then you were going to get, something significant, right? We're going to go do something to celebrate your birthday. And so, like, we were driving from Salida to Buena Vista, and on that road, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I just started crying. Like, and
Mm,
Matt's like, "Are you okay?" And he's just like, "What's going on?" I was just like, "This is my first birthday without my mom."
mm.
And that really hit me hard. And there's times now with career stuff that you want to pick up the phone and she's not there. And I don't have that same relationship with my dad. So there's definitely a void there. Um,
Cassie, I will never forget the year after my father passed away. He taught at UNC Chapel Hill when he was younger. And we all, although his children went to NC State. And so he loved NC State and UNC athletics. And one Saturday afternoon, I was watching. He had passed away in February, and I guess this is September. NC State finally beat Florida State in football. Right, that was a big thing. And I'm running around the house, and I'm like, what am I doing? I can't figure out. And then it hits me. Oh, I'm looking for my dad so I can hug him and say they did it, and he's not there. And so I get this birthday hitting you like a ton of bricks because it's these poignant moments where I think you realize forever is really forever and they're gone.
yeah. Well, and we weren't the lovey family, right? It wasn't Matt's family, like every time you hang up the phone, it's I love you, right? Whether you know it, you're saying it, you mean it. It's just like saying goodbye, right? And
Right.
my family wasn't like that. We weren't an I love you family. And so I did try to say that, but it was really hard because I didn't know how my mom was going to react because we just didn't do that. We weren't huggy. We weren't any of those things. It's not that my mom didn't love me and I didn't love her. It was just like, it was a foregone conclusion, right? I don't need to say it. You know it. And so, it was hard. Matt's like, you need to, try to say I love you when you hang up. Because with his family, again, it was just like, oh, see you later. Goodbye. Love you.
Mm.
With my mom, it's like, okay, love you.
Oh,
And
wait a minute. I'm going to contemplate whether I love you back. Maybe I'll say it next time we talk.
yeah, so that was hard. My mom felt well enough. She came out that September to Colorado, and I wanted to plan some stuff with her so she wasn't just sitting around the house, but I was trying to be conscious of how she was feeling, and she wasn't feeling her greatest, and she was coughing a lot. We did take her up to Winter Park, and unfortunately, too, her sister had begun her second or third battle with breast cancer
Hmm.
at the same time. And my Aunt Terry passed while my mom was out here.
Oh.
And that was really hard because my mom and my Aunt Terry were thick as thieves. Like they were besties as far as siblings go. And
Mhm.
so, again, now I don't know how to react because I haven't had this in my life, right? I mean, when my grandmother died, I don't even remember. I was 7. So I remember it, but I wasn't old enough to like have any kind of play in the situation. When my grandfather died, it was kind of weird circumstances, and I was probably in my late 20s. And so it was far away. I wasn't in the same town. It was different. And so this was the first kind of real death experience that I had. And to
Mhm.
watch my mom on the phone, because she was FaceTiming with my aunt, like my cousin had called everybody in the family to say, let's do one last FaceTime with my mom. I don't know that she's going to make it much longer.
So that's just soul crushing, isn't it? This is the last time I may speak to this person ever. And I just want to bawl like a baby whenever I say that because I go right back to the moment, with my dad, right?
Hmm.
And it was just, yeah, this might be the last time.
I think for my mom, I think that's when the reality of her situation kind of finally sunk in.
Mm.
She didn't go back early because my cousin wasn't going to have a service right away. She wasn't sure what she was going to do because she has a sister that lives in another town. So she went she went home like a week later, and she was coughing a lot at that point. So she, wanted to talk to the doctor about what they could do. And when she went for her next round, at that point it was immunotherapy. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't on active chemo anymore. And they said, well, we'd like to do a CAT scan to see if maybe we want to take some fluid off your lungs, but we can't do the immunotherapy and the CAT scan at the same time. So if we do the CAT scan, we'll have to push your immunotherapy. Okay, let's do that because, again, she's coughing a lot. And so, as part of the CAT scan, it wasn't good, right? I mean, that was kind of like, oh, and after that, they did another scan, and I can't, maybe it was a CAT scan led to the PET scan.
Mm.
And so she did the PET scan, and then she wanted me to come down there for the results, like the conversation with the doctor. And I went down there and went with her, and my dad stayed home. I think that he was like having trouble processing it all too. So it was just easier for me to go with her. And the doctor laid it out, and he's like, it's back. Like we knew it was going to be not an easy road. And they were honest from the beginning to say that the chemo was going to work well till it didn't.
Mm.
And it was a matter of when it didn't is when, that nobody would say anything about any windows like, oh, you got, probably 1 to 5 years. No, that conversation never came up. It was like, it'll work well till it doesn't. And we were to the point where it didn't. And he said, we can do more chemo if that's what you would like to do. You reacted well the first time, but we won't know how you're reacting, for 6 to 12 weeks after we start round 2. And so she took it all in, and we went home, and I tried to make myself a little bit scarce so she could have some conversations with my dad. And I think the next day is when she told me that she decided that she didn't want to try anymore. And that was like, hear your mom tell you that. isn't anything I'd ever wish on anybody.
Cassie, the moment they said, take him home and make him comfortable, there's no help. I think the what that is there's no hope left. And all the air gets sucked out of the bag or out of the room or out of your chest, out of your heart. And you're standing there, you're like, what?
Well, and this is coming from a woman who has fought her whole life. Like, I kept like, what do we have to lose, right? I know it's not my decision, but I kept trying to like figure out a way to position it to like, come on, you got this,
Yeah.
knowing full well. I think it was after that I finally went. I had access to all my mom's records. And the doctor never brought the scan up in the room when we were having our conversation with him. And that night, I think after she said that, and I think we all needed some alone time.
Right.
And I remember looking at the scan online and being like shocked at
Mm.
how bad it was and then getting it. Like, I don't know if she looked at that or not, to be honest with you. I don't know. But at that point too, my dad had started to like talk about like, I'm going to put a Ring doorbell in so that she, if I have to run to the grocery store, she can see. And I'm going to put a ramp in so that, if she wants to go someplace with the wheelchair, it's easy to get her in and out of the house. And I asked him to go for a walk with me that night. Let's take the dogs for a walk, get out of the house. And I said, I don't know if you've looked at mom's scans. I don't know if she's looked at her scans. I said, but I finally looked at the scan and it's bad. Like, I get it now. And so I said, as much as I know that you want to do these things, that shouldn't be the priority right now. Like, we just need to
Mm.
make mom comfortable. She's probably not going to leave the house again. And so that was like that whole reckoning of like of getting him on board with where we were in the whole conversation.
Right. So part of that is not only did you have to do it for yourself, you had to negotiate that divide with your dad as well.
Yep.
And I think it might be the poet David White who said, life is filled with the bitter and the sweet. And sometimes the bitter is just really bitter.
Yeah. At some point too, Matt managed to get down there and I had to come back to Colorado because I was having a shoulder issue, like a really painful shoulder issue. Like I can't even put my seatbelt on in the car issue.
Oh, gosh.
And so, when I'd made this first trip down there again, I didn't go down there with the knowledge that basically, death was knocking on my mom's doorstep. So, Matt came down there and spent his last weekend with my mom. And he's like, you need to come back right away. Because I think I had intended to fly home Sunday with him and then come back like Thursday or Friday that next week. I literally flew home Sunday, went to the doctor Monday morning, got a cortisone shot, and was back on an airplane Monday afternoon.
Hmm.
And that was her last week. And it was
Wow.
really hard because, again, I'm not a born caregiver. The hospice people came in and they were very helpful, but they were not listening to us and recognizing where she was in her journey. It took us longer than it should have to get the bed delivered, the
Mm.
medical type bed to, we had to call the fire department one night because she went to get up and went down and neither my dad or I could get her up. And so I called the hospice people and they're like, well, we don't do that. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'll call the fire department. I'm like, well, we could have had this conversation with me when I'm not in the middle of my mom laying on the floor like a lump.
Right.
And the fire department shows up and I'm embarrassed, right? I have no reason to be embarrassed, but I'm embarrassed that I had to call the fire department to get my mom off the floor.
Yeah.
And, a little bit hysterical. And they're very gracious men showed up and, this isn't, our first rodeo, ma'am. Please don't be embarrassed. Please, we're here to help. If it happens again, just call us. Where can we put your mom to help make her comfortable?
What beautiful angels in the midst of the calamity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But, now it's like putting my mom in the hospital bed and like realizing that we're going to have to put a diaper on her because
Yes.
there's no more helping her in and out of the bathroom and just like all these things. And hospice shows up and I'm basically saying, we'd all agreed with her hospice provider that when the time came, she did not want to be at home. She did not want to be at home because she didn't want to die in her home and have my dad live with that. She knew that neither my dad or I were prepared for this journey, part of the journey. And just hospice was like, they weren't hearing us.
Mm.
And, at one point, one of the care providers showed up and they were going to give her a bath because I'm like, she hasn't had a shower in a while, and I've, done what I could do, but I'm certainly not well versed in what needs to be done.
Right.
And the woman was very nice and sweet, and she tried to do it in a very sweet manner, but she's just like, you need to make sure you move your mom so she doesn't get bed sores. I'm like, I get it.
Wait, I'm sorry, where is that on the list of 42 things I need to do each day?
Yeah, yeah. So it was so hard, and Matt was being very helpful, and I don't even know how to talk to my dad at this point. And I have a girlfriend, Virginia, who lost her mom the year before during COVID too. And I remember sending her a note, text saying, and I said, I'm going to be graphic here, but I said, if my mom shits herself tonight, I'm going to lose it, because all I could think of is, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah. You're not trained for that. We're not trained. Remember that book of life on being human? Can we add that one to a set of instructions, please?
And I was literally beside myself, and I'm like I was like, Dad, have you told her that you love her and that it's okay for her to cross? If she's waiting to hear that from us, we need to make sure she hears it loud and clear. And it's hard to have that conversation, right? Because you're like, I got my dad, I've got Richard. I'll make sure that he's okay. You've done enough suffering. You can go. Like, I don't know what you're hanging on for anymore. And you're having all these conversations out loud with yourself, like in your head, whatever. And we eventually get to the point where we go to bed on her last night. And I wake up at some point, and I'm pretty sure I don't hear the oxygen machine. And so I'm like, oh, maybe she's passed, and my dad just he wanted to let me sleep. And, there wasn't anything I could do in the middle of the night anyway. So I get up, I open the door. As soon as I open the door to my bedroom, I hear the machine. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I was, hallucinating. I walk down the hallway and I look in, and she appears to be peacefully sleeping, and my dad's in his bed next to her sleeping. And I was like, okay, I'll go back to bed and sleep for a couple more hours. And when I got up, I walked out, and my dad said, she's gone. And I said, thank God. Because we were both at that point. Like,
I call it the grief paradox, right? And in it, I do not want this person to leave this earthly life. I love them so much, but I am exhausted and I don't know what to do here. And you're suffering, and I don't want that for you. And it's the grief relief paradox. I am relieved it's over, and I am now grieving that you are gone. And no one told me that I was going to have this range of I've never heard of the grief relief paradox until I made it up a couple of months ago, right? It's like, oh, that's what's happening. Yeah, right? That's what's happening. And no one tells us about it.
Yeah.
Well, Cassie, thank you for sharing this very emotional journey. Looking back, the wisdom that you've gained, if someone else is experiencing this for the first time, what advice would you offer them? What hope can you give them? What got you through this process?
I try to help with just learning the things that I learned through the whole hospice journey, right? It took me a couple months. I wrote them a letter on how I felt about the whole thing.
Wow.
And surprisingly, they called me back and, were gracious and wanted more feedback on what happened and why I felt the way that I felt. So again, we talked about it earlier, but don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, for your loved ones, and get people to hear you. So I'd say that. I was like, I think you learn who your friends are. And I say that we all have a lot of friends, the ones that are going to be there for you in the moment. I think those are defining moments there, and really leaning on them. And I say I love you a lot more now. I don't hang up the phone with my dad without saying I love you. I say it in friends with texts. So I don't want to take that for granted anymore. And, I certainly would be there. I have a friend that her father was diagnosed with cancer late last year. And I was just like, here's just some of the things to be on the lookout for, right? Because I don't know that your journey is going to be like mine, or just, not like mine, but, as you go through it, don't be afraid to ask.
I
So
know she appreciates having you as a resource. I think that's the most important thing is having a friend or colleague who's made the journey before you and is now reaching back to bring you along and let you ride the coattails of their wisdom, because doing that by yourself is hard and difficult.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, Cassie, it's been a beautiful gift to me and to our listeners to share in your experiences today. Before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know or share about this journey for you?
Well, it's funny because at different points in my life, I've come across the "You are enough," that little tagline, right?
Mm.
Ironically, when I was back in Greensboro at some event I was at, I actually bought a T-shirt that said it. I thought for a while about having a tattoo of "You are enough," but I think that that's probably the important thing for me to remember through kind of everything that I've been through is not letting myself down due to other people's expectations, and that I am enough. And if I'm not enough for that person, then that's their loss, not mine. And so just trying to reconcile that through all my journeys. And as I move forward, I think that's the one thing that I would maybe leave with people.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And really appreciate you being here today. And thank you for sharing the wisdom. Love you, Cassie.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Tomi.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Sacred Gut Punch. I'd like to thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible, the EI 3.0 companies of Bryan Insights and the Center for Emotional Well-Being, and of course, always to my husband, attorney Jim Bryan. Thank you for your endless support and love. I love you to the moon and back, Jimmy. If you're experiencing a sacred gut punch, remember, while you may feel alone, you are not alone. Help is out there. If you or someone you know is in crisis and considering suicide or self-harm, please seek support. Call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. And if you're not in the United States, find a helpline in your country with Befrienders worldwide at befrienders.org. Your well-being is important to us.